Hello, welcome back to my space. Eunice Adubango here. I'm very, very happy and excited to have you. I know you have enjoyed the podcasts, the one that I did on men's mentorship with Pastor Barnabas, the one where he was introducing us to the idea of mentorship. And then we had another one about the man of honor. And then I also shared some personal things that I have gone through in the area of mentorship, in the area of working with people and seeing men of honor being formed, and I think it has been absolutely beautiful. Now today I have come with a friend of mine. How long have I known you?
More than
14 years.
It's coming 14 because by the time we met we're still in that tent church, that makeshift we used to have at Watoto Church.
How long have you been married, Derrick?
I'm in my 11th year.
Yeah, so yeah. Because I think we met you around that time, Singles with a Purpose. Yes, it's been about 14 years. So,
14 years.
Today I come to you with a friend of mine, Derrick Tusiime. He is going to introduce himself. We have worked with him as a person, me and my husband, that is. We've worked with them as a couple. We've worked together as a family. We've worked together as business people. We've worked together as many things. Yeah, so I want to introduce to us Derrick Tusiime, the one and only one, and then we say ta-da, and then the curtains go. So anyhow, Derrick, please introduce yourself to my people in this space.
Thank you, Dr. Eunice.
You've called me doctor. You know, recently, my husband started calling me Dr. Eunice. I said, brand.
What is the catch?
Even you.
Every cloud has a silver lining.
Anyway, yes, Derrick.
Derrick Tusiime. Been married we're now in our 11th year to a very wonderful, beautiful lady, Agnes Lydia Tusiime.
Lydia is
the love of my life. We are blessed to have children. I'm almost at my level 4, those who understand the bilingual of level 4.
The fourth floor.
The fourth floor. So I'm a few months there.
Okay.
And I think it looks good on me, guys. So
please, we've not yet reached. Tobala majinga tegana, you know? Yeah, it has to hatch first. Yes.
So born in the 80s as well, during that time when I think this country was going through a lot of turmoil, a lot of transition of heads of state and the time of war. Around that time is when I was born.
Okay.
Born in a village where we had no electricity. I think till to date we don't have electricity. I was not privileged.
You people vote badly.
I think we did vote right.
You've not voted right since the 80s.
We have been voting right. We don't know what happened. Well, I was not privileged to be born in a hospital like most people are born. I was born in a banana plantation, actually.
Wow.
Because my mom was helped by a birth attendant. And I was the third child in coming. She had actually lost the first 2 children. So my name Tusiime.
So you're like they call them rainbow babies, is it?
So the name Tusiime actually stems from there, meaning give thanks to God.
Thanks,
it was appreciating God for the gift of the son finally after losing the other 2. So that's how I qualify to be firstborn.
Okay.
Yes, after I was born, I was then raised by my grandmother. That is a bit awkward. People are wondering, why would you have a mother and then later you raise a grandmother? Long story, we'll get into the nitty-gritties. And then here we are today.
Wow. So how did you come to Kampala? Since, we are talking from Kampala, we are not in that village where there is no electricity. That's why you guys can see us. You can see us because there is some electricity where we are. So we are not shooting this from that place where there is no electricity. So how do you get to Kampala then?
In the early 2000s, I struggled through school, finished my senior 4. Then when I was done with it, while studying in school, I needed to raise tuition. It started actually during my primary 7, but also prior to primary 7, while in school, my primary school from P3 up to P7, my grandmother who raised me She's called Mrs. Cooper Grace. I was honored that during that time she was able to negotiate.
Cooper Grace? Your grandmother is a Mzungu? You people. I'm getting to know Derrick from here.
It's just
wow.
It is just the name.
The name Cooper
sounds
those things English, like it's not even Israel Park.
Yeah, it's the Israel Park names.
Okay.
You know? So it's more or less like that. So Mrs. Grace Cooper at that time was able to negotiate with a school. That was Hinga Primary School way back in Fort Portal. And she was able to negotiate with the head teacher. May his soul rest in peace, the late Sembo, who passed on of recent. And he was able to allow me study, but on two conditions. One, I would keep in school and also be part of the school choir. So,
but Derrick, Derrick is such a poor singer. This is not good.
You know, choir is not just about singing.
This is really not
in our primary school days, you remember there were instruments that we used to play. So
xylophone.
I played the xylophone. I used to play ndingidi. That is one stringed instrument which you strum. So I used to play that, but I was also very good at dancing.
Okay.
Local you try in one of these days.
Okay.
I was good at dancing.
That of jumping like an ape.
Yeah. In Fort Portal, the local dance is called Runyege. Well, the royal one is called the Makondere. So we do the Makondere, which is the royal dance, and then the Runyege, where you actually have rattles on your legs.
Yes, I know that one.
To different
jumping, I agree. You can jump, Derrick.
Yes,
but so there's other things.
I did a lot of
you
that.
Guys, Derrick,
we actually danced our way and got the school to compete at the regional, district, regional, and then district levels. We even got to the nationals. Okay. Now, my first time to come to Kampala was when we actually won the regional dancing school music competitions. Shimone then was the place. So that time we hired us a coaster and we came in that coaster. And the challenge was the way we imagined Kampala. We thought it was the city we used to see in movies. So my expectation was, as we enter the city, I was going to start seeing skyscrapers, high-rise buildings. We get to Natete, we're in a slum.
You reach Chengera.
We continue Chengera.
Whatever.
Where Fufa House is there used to be like a grass-thatched house.
This.
I kept wondering, who is the city? We drive in, go through old Kampala, then we end up at the where Nachivo is right now.
But that driver needs to be taken to prison. He should have shown us off properly.
Well,
you kept Kampala through a window?
That was their usual route. So we end up at they used to opposite, I think that where... What is the place? Where Nachivo Stadium is currently, there used to be a bus terminal called Link. I mean, no, not Link, Kalita. Kalita buses, yes. Where they used to park. Yes. So we came through that route. The road was not yet one way now as it is, through William Street, and then we ended up somehow at via, I think, William Street, and then somehow we curved through via Entebbe, the traffic lights there. Then we go around, we end up at Shimoni, the Crescent Towers, that roundabout. And there we were. The only raised building that made sense for us then was Crescent Towers. So we kept hoping maybe the city is past this. So we're going to sleep, then probably along the way we'll get to see the city.
You will go into the city.
So, and yet we're already in the city. So that is how I get to Kampala.
You suffered. Okay, so you grew up with your grandmother. Can you take us through why your grandmother, why not mom, why not dad? Was yours the typical home as we know it, where mother, father are together, they wake up and take us to school, so that you can at least tell us that you learned all your good manners from mother and father?
Well, I didn't grow up with my father and mother. Later I got to learn as I grow that my father was only a seed donor. He donated seed, and that was the last, with all due respect, donated seed and took off. Fatherhood,
be nice.
Being a father is by choice and by decision, by commitment. But anyone can see a child. You don't need, it's not so much rocket science. So he deposited seed and took off, but he told my grandmother then that he will come back. No one should take me from her. He'll come back and make amends, and he'll be back soon. I was told by my late grandmother, Anne Kavadaki Avoli, may her soul rest in peace. We lost her about 2 years ago.
I remember that travel with
such a tragic moment for me. Yes. So she tells me that he came and then he left. And I asked her, who was he? What did he do? I was told he was a businessman. He actually used to trade in minerals. He's a dealer in gold, diamonds, and all that, ivory. And so he used to trade along the Central African Republic, Congo route down South Africa. That is what I was told. So probably my father is some rich guy dude somewhere we never met. So that was the last time my grandmother saw my dad. So he leaves. 9 months later, I'm born. A few months later, I think around, she says between 3 and 4 months, my mother, being a young girl, I think she gave birth to me around in her 20s. I think she was around 20 or 19 there. Yes. So she has no one to support her, and the pregnancy, I'm told, wasn't intended. It's just one of those events that happened. You know, you're desperate, you've lost 2 kids, you're looking for companionship, you're looking for someone to understand you and mourn with you and walk through life with you. So I don't know the details. I don't know if she was taken advantage of. Maybe that sparked off the resentment in the beginning for me as a child. I don't know. So she leaves me home and she moves on into another relationship, unfortunately now with another man who was also married somewhere else.
So that's how you get to have siblings.
So that's how I get to have siblings, and that is how I also get now to stay with my grandmother, because she couldn't go with me into that new relationship, and then she had to leave me home.
Okay.
So my grandmother raises me and was told at some point with her goats, some goat milk. I hope I don't have any goat instincts in me. So rise through that, and it got tough at some point. My grandmother never used to drink alcohol, but she was forced to brew alcohol. And part of what killed her when we diagnosed her in hospital, her lungs had been suffocated with so much smoke. At that time, they would brew using
the distillation.
The distillation process.
You know those things we learned in school. Those people used to do them, by the way, pipettes, burettes, siphons, and what, and
it was a very rudimentary approach.
Yes.
So she brewed alcohol to be able to educate my uncle and also fend for us food. But years later, she was voted the LC one, and then she did that for almost 15 years. And while she was doing that, our home was like, I think, a UN campsite. It became a transition center that whoever didn't have where to stay, they were in our home. I don't know how she did it. I remember there were 3 bedrooms in that house, but we were over 25 in that home. I don't know how she did it and how she used to host all of us, be able to provide food, be able to provide for us care. The hospitals were not there during that time, so for us, we grew up on herbs, because my grandmother was alive then, and my great-grandmother. They were just neighbors. So whenever you fell sick, my great-grandmother would just enter we had a very big farm and the bush nearby. She'd come back with herbs, cook, squeeze a few things, you drink, and you go to her. The first time actually to take modern medication is when I had a very bad malaria. And I took chloroquine, and the thing used to itch us during that time.
I know that itching chloroquine.
In the 90s. And that was the last time I actually had that kind of malaria.
Wow. So you are growing up in this place where it's like the UN camp. You don't have, the authority of a father over you. The mom is gone. Grandma is grandma. Like
not that
she
mom
can
was gone completely. She was in the next
she used to come. Okay.
Come in.
Yeah, but she's not like a constant authority over you. Are there any mannerisms you picked up there that were probably not good, that if Lydia found you with, we would be sitting here talking about divorce and things like that?
Interestingly, I should say no.
Okay.
Because the environment we grew in and the community was safe space during that time, because villages didn't have so much. You'd have the next house would be maybe half a kilometer apart and all that. And we literally knew each other in the whole entire village, so they knew who is whose child. The advantage during the time when we grew up was it took a village indeed to raise a child. So if the neighbor found you doing something wrong, they'll definitely punish you, and if they came back to report to grandmom,
It would be worse.
Would even be worse.
It was
So you'd rather
better for
accept
the
the punishment and you're handled there.
Yes.
I think the only vices I would say that time were around food, like in either picky children, you go to a neighbor's mango tree without permission, you pick some maize because probably you're hungry at some point, you need food.
Okay, but then do you think, okay, so do you think then that you were very well groomed to be able to get out here in the world and be the Derrick that I finally met?
No, that wouldn't have been possible in that village setting.
Okay.
The uncle I earlier told you on is now a Reverend Charles Kayondo. Actually took me on, I think I was around 3.5 there. He used to be a teacher at Nyakasura School. So he took me in at that time. I remember it was quite complicated that time trying even to move, because the transport system then were trucks, and they used to have these pickups, the Sahara pickups, and the Datsuns. So if you are privileged to have one, you use that. And Marutis, those were the cars then. So you either were on a truck, a Fuso truck, or that Sahara. But they would pack it with food and all that, so it would be on top of the food. And the road was so bad. Where we were, we had a winding road around Mount Rwenzori, where I was born. The place was called Kabasindagizi, a very poor remote village. Now the district is called Intoroko district. But we maneuvered somehow through that. And he took me to Nyakasura School. I got there, this was like London. The school is tarmacked. It had a tarmacked road and all that. It was the staff quarters. I said, God, I think there was electricity. First time to see tap running water. Whoa! Bathtub.
We thank God you didn't drown in the tub.
My uncle took good care. He ensured that didn't happen. So a lot of those amenities were seen then. So around 1993-94, there was an earthquake in Fort Portal. It was a blessing also in disguise for me growing up as a child. The US government came in with aid. That's when we began to get baked and tinned beef and all that, and chicken, then US cooking oil and corn. Now, away from the cassava and the matoke, we used to eat the other side of the sweet potatoes. Now here we are eating more modern stuff, because soda used to come during Christmas, and bread. It was called, I think, buffalo bread, and then soda was called Sweps that time. Would only have it during Christmas. Then sandals also used to come. Umoja sandals also used to come during Christmas. Red in color with the use of ready-made clothes. Or if not, grandma would get part of her cloth and make for all of us.
All of you.
So we're all in one uniform. Then with new brand sandals, then we go to church.
That's the life. That was good life.
That was good life, innocent, beautiful, wonderful life. The whole community was exciting to be part of, but nowadays the number of things have changed. So we get to Nyakasura School, and my uncle, luckily enough, is born again.
Oh, okay.
My first time to encounter God was with him. I get there, and the first thing he gives me is a small Gideon's.
Those Gideon's International.
Bibles.
Yes, I remember.
So he gives me that with the New Testament.
Yes.
And the Psalms and big Proverbs.
Yeah, it has Psalms and Proverbs. Yes.
He told me, if you don't want to go back where we came from, I need you to read this book. You might not understand it, but continue reading as you go to school, and I'm also going to read for you. That was the first instruction, day one. You're telling a 3-year-old. I think I was around 4 maybe. So that statement stayed with me. He probably does not even appreciate what that meant to me. So he tells me that book is yours. Every time you're going to Sunday school, keep that book. It is your Bible. Go with it. Along the way, you'll understand what it means. I said, okay. Now, because I was a child, that time would go to kindergarten, come back at around midday. So we'll get back to the house, and what he would do after picking me from school, he played Billy Graham's sermons. That time we had cassette tapes. So he would turn on the radio, and the sermons kept playing. So all the classic sermons that Billy Graham preached, I listened to them. And the song that did echo in my mind, I think, was Just As I Am. Billy Graham used to play that a lot as the podcast is starting or towards the end. Towards the end when he's
making an altar call.
So that kept Just As I Am, Just As I Am. Come to me, just as I am. I said, okay. So along the way in Sunday school, one day I also chose to accept Christ as my personal Lord and Savior.
Oh, wow.
It got serious. So I began to listen to Billy Graham, the desire to want to be like him. Because there's someone he preached, and then I think it was either from the 70s or 80s or 60s, I don't know. He said, it does not matter even when you're a child. You can accept Christ, and Christ will receive you to his kingdom, because we are small bodies, but we are spirit beings who are already old. I said, okay. So I accepted the man. This Jesus. I said, okay, I want to know Jesus. But then he said, you can walk with him. He's standing at the door. He knocks. Then when I asked Jesus, you say you're at the door knocking. Why don't you come
Where
in?
is that door?
No, I asked him, if you're at the door, why don't you come in?
Don't you come in?
That's the question I asked him. That night, when I asked that question, I remember I was asleep. It is as alive as it could be today. This man walked indeed through the door, very tall, putting on white. He was almost like my skin, almost black. A complex of brown. He walks through the door, he comes in, and he says, I'm going to walk with you and take you on a tour. He holds my hand. I remember the school, I could even describe, those of you who have been to Nyakasura school, there was a father called Father Fortas, over Fortask, I think. That's how the pronunciation I remember. Just next there was another teacher called Kakibogo, who used to teach economics. The next house is where we stayed. So the man walks me through the house, through the kitchen door, because he entered through the living room door. He picks my hand. I was seated in one of the chairs. We used to have craft, beautiful chairs. Came in.
I remember the craft chairs. I think every family had
wooden, yes,
that.
craft chairs.
Yes.
Very beautiful craft.
Yes.
I don't see it these days. So he holds my hand. We walk through the compound. We get up to the tarmac. Gives me a tour for the entire school. He spoke so much, there was so much conversation, I can't recall the details, but the moment of holding my hand even till today, even as I do this interview, it is as alive, as real as I can still feel it. So that was my first encounter with Jesus and him walking with me. That's how I got to know that this man is real. It's not just a story.
Wow.
I told my uncle this story much later. He was in utter shock. It's like, yes, for me, he visited me, I was here. So the change you began to see in me was not because you're talking too much or whatever it is, or you're trying to guide me. This man
came in.
But the challenge was I didn't know how to tell you. Because I kept wondering, how do I describe
this thing?
I tell him which man, because the questions I kept thinking were going to be too many. And I had not also understood the man yet very well. But first time he came. Time passed by. Now, much later, my uncle tells me he's going to leave. Come to Kampala, probably got, I think, a better job. He had his friend called Criven. I think they were coming here for greener pastures. Tells me he has to leave. So I was seated, it's still in the living room. Then I asked this man, I said, but Jesus, now they're going to leave me alone. Are you going to come back and we'll walk together? I still remember these conversations. He said yes. The man came back. This time I was excited. He told me, no.
You're like Manoah's wife.
So
Has come back.
this man, even when he said he was leaving, I didn't feel lonely, I didn't feel alone. I said, it is okay. I have this man who walks through the door and comes in the night for me in my dreams. So when the Bible talks about Samuel's story, God calling him, it is not just another story. It's not just another script. To me, I have experienced it in myself in real life. And there are those things you have as dreams, but at some point I thought it was not just a dream. Because
like
I felt like I was awake. I was in the moment.
Yeah.
So that is how I encounter Christ. That's how I get to accept Christ as my personal Lord and Savior. So much later, there is a place called Chisenyi when you go to Fort Portal. So I lived there with my other grandmom. We lived together for another 3 years. After the 3 years, she had to relocate back to the same village we came from. Why? My uncle had left her business. She was running a retail shop. But when you eat the capital and then you eat everything at some point,
Chireke.
you just have to close.
Let's not depress the members.
We will not get into those details. But I was taken back to the village. Now, when the news, that time they used to write letters. So she wrote a letter, they put it on Kalita bus, it came to Kampala. That time, I think he was on Amber House, that's where he had an office. So the letter was delivered there, writing indicating that we have filed the life in Fort Portal. The Chisenyi life has also filed. We are going back to the village.
Yes.
So we pack and go back to the village. My uncle is heartbroken, he's in Kampala and he's wondering, he says, now, the only hope I have is this young man going to school. Now he's actually going back.
Correct.
Because at that time there's a school called Kahunga Bunyonyi Primary School. That's where I had enrolled up to my P2.
What's the meaning of that?
Kahunga Bunyonyi is the school that the name is,
I feel like it's
the
a
name
sentence.
is driven from a story. There used to be a hole, a portal point somewhere. Birds would come for some reason, lose balance.
So it's sort of
like the Bermuda Triangle of sorts.
So it sort of attracts
Yes.
birds.
But
I don't speak your language, but
once they land there, they somehow
That's
cannot fly off again. It's more of the Bermuda Triangle story of sorts. Fort Portal has many interesting things. So we grew up, and that's how the school derives its name. So it basically means a place where birds gather. So the school derives its name from that. So I was in P2 by that time, going to P3. That's when now they returned me to the village. My uncle writes another letter back. And this time when she writes to Mrs. Cooper Grace. Now, Mrs. Cooper Grace, we used to call her Moti. She was a primary school teacher at Vinga Primary School. Now she's retired. She receives the letter and she talks to the husband, Mr. Cooper, who happens my other grandfather. They make up their mind. They had these Land Rover 110s. They drove that Land Rover 110. Came to our village where seeing a car would be a miracle. They reach the trading center. Somehow they were able to inquire where the home is, and someone directs them because literally everybody knew themselves around the village. The moment you mentioned the LC1's home, and Kabadaki, my grandmother, everybody knew her as chairman. So they bring them home through, these they're foot roads where you just walk and there's grass in between, but the roads were worked on. We used to have what they call community work. So they would dig the roads actually. And to widen them a bit, there would be a time when they would do drumming in the village. I don't know whether you've had those experiences. There'll be a season when if the place is grown with a lot of bush, they will do a certain sound of drumming. Then the whole community would know that, you know what, it's now time. You pick a hoe and a slasher.
In Uganda, we used to call it Sagara Galamite. Nobody should be sleeping.
That's how we used to communicate. When you had Kanga Baija, then you knew someone was dead. So that is how the announcements used to go around in the village. So you kept here. Someone would go up the hill, just drum that sound. Then the wind will take that sound, and then you'd know now. This sound means that. That other sound meant that. That's how the music now comes in and the listening. So they arrive on that one fateful day, and wow, the first time we see a car, I also kept wondering, who are these guys? Why are they here? I had heard about him, and we hadn't met. The man now comes with a wife. They begin to talk to my grandmother, and then later my mom also got to know. She also came. We are taking Derrick. We're not leaving him here. I'm like, whew. So I went to park. I tell you, what do you park apart from your pair of sandals and this old torn shoe and the shirt, and you're done basically. One black Avera, all your entire belongings.
Your life is
summarized in that black Avera. So actually the black Averas didn't exist. For us, we used to have the ones that were red and black. They used to pack
I remember red. Some of them would be red, white,
and yellow. And then some of them were branded by Tiger Head, the batteries. You people. So those are the Averas that we used to have. So I remember parking in that. Then my books, we left. Wow. I arrive, and when we arrive in Fort Portal town, the first thing they do for me is take me to the salon. The hair was already grown. I mean, they had to trim the hair. She took me to Mpanga Market, bought for me some clothes. Then we needed to fit into the school system, got me some shoes, got me some socks. That was the weekend. Monday we had school. When I got to her home, they had electricity. There was an extra double deck bed for us. We were going to sleep. We had arrived, some of us.
I can see you arrived long ago.
There's a street called Mugurusi Road in Fort Portal. That's where the teachers' quarters are for Vinga Primary School. Those of you who have been to Fort Portal. Next to Mukwano's house. Where Mukwano actually used to live in Fort Portal. He had a wife there for a very long time.
Wow.
Before the old man passed on. So that's the street where we used to live. And they take me into school. That negotiation happens with her. She's a teacher in school. She's a teacher of English. So part of this accent and English comes from her. We give her kudos for that. So I get into school. She negotiates for my being into school, and somehow that arrangement came in. The teacher was told how I am gifted, how I am talented, how I am hardworking. She put up a good pitch for me. I didn't know. I got to know much later. That's how now I joined P3. That first term, I think I was among the first top 5. They were impressed.
This was nice.
They said, this is the guy we need. So begin to top the class, leadership skills begin to emerge. You're part of co-curricular activities. I played football that time, was part of music school, choir, and all that. They start grooming me in. By P4, I now get fully fledged into music. So the dancing and all that picked tone. So from the time I joined the school choir, it seems like I carried the anointing and the blessing in. They only needed my grace for us to beat them and beat the regional competitions and then come to the national theatre. Then come for national competitions here at the national theatre. And that's how the first time comes, and then we beat other schools in Fort Portal and the regional schools in Western Uganda. We end up now coming to Kampala and we have the national theatre, and the curtains, my God, they are controlled by a certain control room. You guys, you have no clue. This is the life I want to be part of. Opposite Shimone, there used to be a showroom for cars. I don't remember, was it Yamaha, whatever it is, but there used to be a car showroom across there. So I remember going through those, what you call them, the metallic railings that they used on the fence. So we're basically looking through the metallic fences, look at the cars.
And then say, that's my car. I like that life. I like that life where you can say, when the planes are going up, you said, that is my plane.
That is my plane.
Isn't that faith? The substance of things hoped for.
And the evidence that
we actually see
right in the sky.
Wow. You've had such an eventful life, Derrick. It's interesting getting to know some of these things. Now I can put a few pieces together. Now let's get into making Derrick the man. So for me, I met you at Watoto Church, KPC then. Yes. We were not yet Watoto. That's how I met you. I met you in a group of mentorship. That's actually how we get to meet, because I think the mentors, the key mentors in that group, invited Brand and I to come and talk to you people in that group. So can you take me through, because now I want us to get into this part of this story where now we are talking about, I mean, you had people in your life, somebody has led you to Christ, someone has given you the Bible, you're reading the Bible, you already know how to speak English, you are already winning competitions. I mean, what do you lack? Nothing. You can even already claim aeroplanes, and generally you lack nothing. You have everything you need, the Lord being your shepherd. But let's talk about this thing called mentorship. How do I get to find you in this group? Can you take us like quickly from claiming the cars to me finding you in this group?
Well, I think around 2004, 5 there. I now come back to Kampala, maybe to give you some bit of context. Church of Uganda has a PDR planning department. It's called Planning, Development and Rehabilitation, PDR. Okay. There were 2 leaders. There was Jessica Nalwoga, and there was another gentleman, who I don't know whether he's still the current Secretary General for the Interreligious Council of Uganda, Joshua Chitakuli. So Joshua Chitakuli and Jessica had a program under Church of Uganda where they would go through schools, because there was so much striking during that time, in the early 2000s. So they came up with an initiative to form what they called peace clubs in schools. So while in school, secondary school, while at Nyakasura I was in leadership, I did lead the peace club. That club and we used to offer peace building strategies and how we can coexist peacefully in school. We don't have to demonstrate. We think about arbitration, think about negotiation, and get to table and talk with the school administration. We don't have to demonstrate and destroy property all the time. So I tapped into these 2 leaders. I became friends with them. Now, because I had a challenge of tuition, I explained my story to them, and they were excited. They're like, okay, what can we do to help? So I finished senior 4. There's no more hope. I can't continue with high school. There's no tuition. My grandmother couldn't afford, so with my mother, because there was no money. So these 2, Jessica and Joshua, promised me and said, well, if you come to Kampala, we can work out something. I remember I spoke to one of my uncles, a son to Mr. and Mrs. Cooper, called Mugabe Amos. He had a small stool, which I still have till date at home. He gave me that one stool, gave me 3 saucepans, gave me 2 cups, gave me a fork and a spoon and a small teaspoon, packed my documents for senior 4 in there, got onto Kalita bus, came to Kampala with the knowledge that I had had previously coming in now as a student participate during my primary school years.
Now you knew how to maneuver.
So I knew how to maneuver my way, packed my bag, and I came to Kampala.
Wow.
And now when I got here, I connected with one of my other uncles called Sanyu Martin. He was at St. Peter's Nalia here, Spener. So I somehow maneuvered and got there, and he gave me lodging for some time. And now I had to connect back with Joshua now and Jessica. So at some point I had to leave actually. Actually, when I came, I didn't get to Sanyu's home first. I started with Jessica's home. She used to live around that Ring Road, Kabaka, where there's that Kabaka's, I think, gate, the one they opened towards Ulange, just opposite there. That's where she used to live. So I spent some, I think, 2 weeks in her living room. That's where I would sleep, in their place. And that's how I got into Kampala. And they took me to Church of Uganda. I got to know where the offices are. They began to lobby for a position for me. So I became a season worker. They created a position for peace building and conflict resolution officer. And that's how I got into PDR. That's how now I get to the office of the Archbishop. Then he was now Dr. Luke, the most
reverend.
Luke Robbie, and that's how we end up there with his office.
The most reverend, the right reverend. Let's not
those many wonderful titles.
We might
That is how I end up in Papa's office at the wonderful hill of Namirembe, and that's how life started.
Wow.
Now, there, I found my way around, ended up at Mackay College because I needed to go to school. Secured myself a vacancy there, so I'd work some days at the same time, go to school and study. On Sundays, I forget the pastor's name, but he's in charge, I think, of the Bible School of Miracle Center.
Is it Makoko? Is it
Makoko.
Arthur?
Not Arthur. Arthur was the interpreter.
Oh, I know the pastor who is in charge of the Bible school. I just don't know his name, but I know him. I know. I can even almost see him, his stature.
His name was just
Yes.
Yes.
Someone type it.
Yes. So, he was in charge of the Bible school that time. So, we met him along that Ruvaga Road, and he spoke to us around that junction, and he introduced us to Miracle Center, me and my roommate. He was called James Tohaise. So that's how we end up at Miracle Center. Part of our 2 years of my being in high school, we used to pray from Miracle Center. The music now picked again, and we're there, the different choirs, the ministry. So we sat under the ministry of Pastor Jessica and Robert Kayanja for 2 years.
Wow.
We were blessed. We used to live around, where there's Ivy's Hotel as you go towards Natete. After leaving Mackay College, at Mackay College, actually, I lived in a very interesting shelter. It was like a small house. For that time, it was 30,000 shillings. It was a lot of money. When it would rain, you and the roof, it was leaking, but somehow we managed our 2 years. So when I finished, I now moved towards Ivy's because it was a better place up there. That's where now we were. So you'd walk, trek all that way, and go to Miracle Center, pray on Sunday, then come back. That's how now I got back now into ministry, connecting with God again and serving. Now, some Sundays I'd go to Namirembe, like that. And then through that connection, one day, while at Ivy's there, I don't remember the gentleman's name, but there's a young man where there used to be a well. One day he found us fetching water. And he stopped by and said, hello. I said, how are you? Fine. He says, hey, what do you do? I said, well, I live up here. I said, I also live around the corner. And the man says, it was a Wednesday evening. He says, ask him where you're going. He says, I'm going for sale. I'm like, what is
What's
that?
a sale?
Now, sale meant a prison for me. I'm
Exactly.
like, guy, you're going to prison? What's up? I said, no, I'm going for sale. I'm part of Watoto Child. Not KPC there. So I'm like, KPC, what is that? Because I had never heard of KPC. Interestingly, I was in the city, but KPC was not something I heard of. It's like, okay, KPC and sale. I said, tell Jai. I said, okay, give me your number. I had like a small phone. I said, probably we'll get in touch. Gave him my phone number and he left. So I could get home and tell James, you know what? This guy is saying he's going to sale. Is he a convict? What is going on? But then how can he be a convict and he's walking on the street?
Yes.
What does it mean? I hear the KPC. It didn't make sense. Then I said, okay, whatever it is, Them said, guy, have a fede. Banji Bukampala. Be careful. They may send us back to Pot. So I said, okay, let's be careful with these KPC guys and sell, because sale was not a good terminology to be around with. So, cut the long story short, the guy came back because I had directed him where I stay. So he walks back one Sunday evening and he trying to locate me, and he gets to my place. He says, can we go to my place? I get there. Well, few blocks, kept him, and he's married, he has a family, has 2 children. I'm like, okay.
This guy is not in sale.
Not in sale like I thought. He begins telling me now we host sale here, we're part of Watoto. I said, okay. And he asks me if he can actually take me to Watoto. I said, yeah. KPC then. So I said, fine. So following Sunday, we said, let's try this KPC thing. Get our taxis around Ivy's there. We ended up in the park. We woke up via Equatorial Hotel that time. At KPC, downtown. Now we get there, the service was strange. The setup at Miracle Center was different. Now we get to this one, people were coming. I said, what's going on? He's excited to see us. It was a bit odd. Having grown up and these things didn't come naturally. Excited about, to hug you. Guys, go slow. So we're like, okay, we'll get in. But coming from the West, people were huggy, so it was okay. But you're suspicious about them. You say, hey, church, because here I said, yes. So we get in, there's that waiting lounge. The first service was getting done. We entered now during the second service.
The energy.
Now, the energy, the party. That said, these young people are now
said, this is the place.
Okay. Now, what killed me, the time of the announcements came. The unfortunate event that happened day one when I arrived, they were announcing that the pastor, I think it was Pastor Mark, was leaving the church. I sat in that sermon, they preached, but my head was like, when are we finishing? So that I ran away from this church. A church with no pastor. The pastor is leaving. For reasons that were not very clear. I said, no, I can't be part of this. So I quietly told the guy, we'll come for sale. I went back to James and said, you see what we're talking about? This KPC thing, they have no pastor. Here they are, not even in sale. I said, no, you can't be part of this guys. That is how I do it. The guy would call me, I didn't even receive his calls. He tried inviting me for sale. I didn't connect with him. No, I said, no. You cannot have a church where there's no pastor. You're telling us you want us to subscribe and be part of it. I said, no. I said, okay. Quit. I think the guy gave up at some point. As events would unfold, I get a job around Ntinda Stretcher. There was a printing company there called Riley Media then. So I'm looking for a house. I end up with a house in Chisasi. Now our house was destroyed with the expansion of the road and all that. But right on that corner, as you go towards Kulandiro, there used to be
a mosque.
There was the mosque. Yeah, the mosque was just opposite us, and someone had built a flat.
Yes, and then there was a welding place.
Yes,
Chisotarad.
No.
Oh, yeah, the Kulambiro thing. Yes.
So there was a flat there which they had built, and there were stairs going up.
Yes.
Right behind that flat, there's some community slab. That's where I had found my room, which I could afford. And there was a 2-bedroom house. The KPC thing now comes back again. And there, one evening,
the nearest.
some guy is just walking around there. He's called Chris Mbiru. And Chris says, hello, hey, how are you? We're actually eating commando around there. There used to be a pork joint around there. So the guys are coming out of a pork joint. Me, I was kind of buying my chapatis. Chris had a gang of guys. It was Sunday evening, and they say, hey, how are you? I said, fine. That guy brings up a story again about KPC. I'm like, guys, this KPC thing, they have no... Why is it back again? So I said, okay. Chris, tell me about this. He said, it's not far from after Andere Center. We're just sitting here. He said, we'll try it out. So I went to this mindset. If they don't have a pastor service branch, they should forget me. So I said, okay, fine. So I get there, and the story is different. I was used to being in a building. I had never been
now
to a
you
church
get into a tent.
like this guy. First of all, they didn't have a pastor.
Now they have no building.
Then the guys there, Pastor Joshua, very energetic. There were Patrick Agenda at that time. They came very early. It rained that Sunday. So it was a struggle, parking. Over at some point, instruments went off. I'm like, God. Now, from the other guys not having a pastor, now here we are in a tent. It's even raining. I said, no. But I endured through the services. I'll keep up with the boys. You know, they were good company and we're chatting and talking. That is how I connect with Chris Muviru. I enter his group. There's Tony Salira, then there's Joel Senyonyi that time. That was the entry of the, and the group became bigger. There was, I think there was Pabella in that group. There was, now all these guys, most of them are married. And that is how we met.
Wow.
And we connect now with Watoto Church.
Yeah.
So while there, I end up 2 ministries. There was Evangelism Explore. Was new
life class.
New life class. There was Alfred Miner who enrolled me then because I discovered he was just a neighbor across the road. He used to live on Sota Road. I found him also in that group, so we became friends. He introduced me quickly like that. That's what I liked. I got hooked in. I said, preaching, this is my thing. These guys are serious, and they are my contemporaries. I said, I have now arrived. So that's how we tap in, and. Those guys were also part of a group called SWAP. SWAP is a ministry at Watoto Church called Singles with a Purpose.
With a purpose, yes.
First time I'm hearing Singles with a Purpose. This when did Singles have a
What's
purpose?
the purpose?
These guys are usually random guys. I said, okay.
Mpola. Most of my viewers are singles.
No. I mean, it was fun. Singles with a Purpose. And SWAP as that.
SWAP.
But the name sounded, catchy. SWAP. I'm
SWAP,
like, okay.
yes.
That time they were swapping a lot with Warid and SIM cards, so it made sense. I said, it's a good acronym. But I get in, they had very interesting deals. Accountability, family. Guys are talking family. That didn't augur well with me because it brought sorrow to
so
my
many
heart.
years. You
So
don't
many
want to
bad
remember
memories.
bad
I'm like,
stories.
Family again. It's back. Said, okay. So I get in, join New Life class. Then we graduated through the classes. Then I end up now in SWAP. Joined the ministry. Now there was council, Daniel and Patricia, the wife, Rotiva.
Yes.
The Rotivas. They were the patrons.
Amazing
who were still
mentors.
Wonderful mentors. They used to stay just as you, after Sota Road, you're driving into
I
Chisasi.
remember
on your
their
left,
joint. I remember that home,
where there was a palm tree.
Oh, we
Now
did,
that palm
we
tree
did
joint
stuff there. SWAP was there. Apples of gold in that. This is when we stop and say Patricia and Daniel Rotiva.
Kudos to you guys. Thank you.
Thank you. You have raised generations.
You may not know, but you touch.
Now they know.
So, first time they are hosting, and we get there. It was quite homely. They have a family. That time I had 2 boys who were older, and there was a Kylie, a little baby. Now she's a grown-up girl, interestingly. So she's there, and then they host us. They give us tea, popcorn, and genets. I'm like, this guy is Bachikolavati. Because that kind of hosting and hospitality, since I came to Kampala, it had never happened. But here is.
Until you had been eluding sale was a.
And the name sale became a problem. So there we are, they host us and they begin to talk about the deals. They introduce us to what SWAP is all about. They begin to connect. Now, while they share there, we discuss different topics about parenting, fatherhood, singlehood. How do you live your life as a young person? What are those pitfalls you need to avoid and all that? They kept reciting a lot that thy word have I hid in my heart, so I had not sinned against thee. How shall a young man keep his way pure? By keeping heed of the word of God in his heart and living it out. So they go on, and they're getting people who are uncouth, like some of us. We're not polished. We're in Kampala, you're rough, you have all these fears, you're timid a bit, but you're keeping face. You don't want to show you're a lost sheep in this whole equation. But you keep up face. But in there, you're hurting. I think Dan realized that this guy has issues. He was hurting. And he sought me out. So we became friends with Dan. Then Dan later connected me to Pastor Joshua, and then the assistant then was
Pastor Godson
Sebuguzi. So we became friends. I realized the wife Kathy was also friendly. Then we had Joshua's wife, Aunt Christine. They were homely people. At some point, they hosted us at their home in Chevando. I said, these pastors, God, for them are not complicated, because the protocol then in the previous pastoral ministries I'd been to, the pastor, to see the pastor was not an easy thing. You did more or less an appointment. The formal man, suits, what, but these guys are casual, your usual people, you can connect to them with ease. Then Dan, I learned, he's also a lawyer, but the guy is not complicated, because the aura we know about lawyers.
Roused out there in KJV.
My God. Their English and now we had Joel who made it worse. He would speak very complicated
leave Joel
English.
out of this.
So I'm like, guy,
Please leave
Joel, tone down. So that was my life. Dad sought me out. We start our journey together, to work together, engage with Godson and Pastor Joshua then.
And that is how now we get to
That is how we get to connect with Aduba Cross.
Wow. So getting into this and yet almost starting to go downhill as we reminisce on this mentorship conversation. Tell us about people whom you know have impacted you so much, apart from me. I know, you know your friend. But anyway, people that have mentored you, men, and especially men that have worked with you in the different areas, and you're going to speak to the people and tell them for each of those why it was important. Okay? What did you learn? Especially the things that look trivial. You know, the other day I posted something. I don't know if you saw it. I was saying that I have learned that when you become very close to God, He begins to talk to you about the trivial things. But the deeper things
are from the trivial.
They have their leaning on the trivial.
I saw that.
You saw it.
It's like,
because I noticed that when you begin to work with God, He starts to tell you, Eunice, when you go to the party, don't fill the plate too full. You know, it looks like a trivial thing. That's why you find believers who are tongue speaking, demon chasing, but when it's food time, mountain.
No food etiquette.
And they think that's not a spiritual part. But those things where God can tell you that, you know what, Eunice, don't use that shade of blue today. Use the other shade of yellow. It is the trivial thing. But the deeper things have their leanings on that trivial thing. So what are some of those things that a young man out there might even think, why do I need to work with people? You know, that's a small thing, but then you have learned those things and they make you the man that you are. No further to work with you, but I want to tell you people who are watching us that Derrick's story, and we went into it because for me it's important to me, almost similar to Brand's story, because you know Brand's story.
I do.
When you think about your story and then you put the man Derrick here, it's shocking that you have become this man, and yet that's the story. Because sometimes people think, oh, you must have had a parent, caring uncles, this, that, you must have gone to school like this, Harvard like this. And when I look at your story, when I look at Brand's story, and then I look at the man, I know that what happened in between there was mentorship.
Yes.
So talk to us about mentorship, Derrick.
Well, Dan takes me now into his space, and we begin the same trivial conversations. How are you? How is your life? How are you? Who are your parents?
And Dan can ask questions.
And it's like as if it became...
He cross-examines.
Yes, it became cross-examination now from the lawyers. Like, hey, cancer. I thought it was just tea. And you know, he's doing it casually. We're on the balcony, taking tea. Then we walk around with Guinness, and he
loves Guinness.
Him and the stories happened a lot around those Guinness. So he takes me in and all that. And one of the things he chooses to harness from me was the commitment to avail myself and serve. At any call, whatever time he called me, Derrick, are you available, sis? Can you do this? Yes. I was not the type, what is the bill, what is the invoice and all that.
Because if you're going to be mentored, you have to be available.
So I get in and we start talking. It's not that we are signed up a mentorship agreement, but it was informal. So it got in like that. So, well, I'm in his space. We begin a father-son mentorship program because he has 2 sons. So because I'm available, we start doing camping. They have their home around Kajansi, beautiful hill.
Wow.
So we used to go up and camp in the night. Their 2 sons, Mike and Gideon. Now the pastor whose name I've forgotten, the one of Miracle Center, would come along. There was another gentleman called Patrick. Then there's engineer, what is his name? The engineer's wife. The name will come back along the way. But those gentlemen were a group of about 5 gentlemen that would come together. They'll come along with their sons. John Kakitahi. So he'd come with his sons and all that, and Patrick with his sons from Entebbe. Patrick Mujeni put problem on him.
I know, Patrick.
So they would come around with their sons and would go camp there. Now I start teaching the boys, this is how we light the fire. This is how we cook. So we cooked our food in there. Dan's mom, may her soul rest in peace. She would actually, they had cows. They have cows till today. So do milking and give us milk. Make our own tea in the night and all that. Then we'll have conversations around that fireplace with Gideon and Michael and the boys who came from these different pastors' homes. The pastor, actually, the home pastor, and then Patrick.
Yes,
and
Patrick
John,
and
his
John.
son. So we started off like that. So every holiday time would be up the hill. Then later we graduated. We went to, there's a place, you go via Gaba, you cross the lake. We used to take a boat cruise. I forget the name of the place, but there's an adventure park somewhere there. So we go to that island. It's the other side of Mukono, but the shorter route is through Gaba. So we'd also get there, camp around the fire, would have a weekend over there. Basically, they would speak into these boys' lives. After the boys went to sleep, then me and the gentleman now would sit around. They each started talking about their lives, their projects they are part of, the challenges they have gone through in life. Or speak about their marital lives and all that, and what is happening in their marriages, what they can do better. That is how my mentorship happened. While I sat in there, they also spoke about the books they are reading, why they are reading them, and how they're impacting them. That is how I started my 3-year reading university course, my premarital counseling journey.
Wow.
So for 3 years, the next 3 years, I focused on nothing but reading everything they talked about. They mentioned books to do with Eddie Cole and him running a men's ministry and what he did. I went for those videos, bought MBs, sat, downloaded those old videos, the crusades he did, watched as many as I could, read as much. There's, is it an app or something only called PDF Drive? Told me to go to that and I would be able to download books for free. So I managed to secure a laptop, downloaded those books, started reading Eddie Cole's books. Then along the way, Miles Monroe happened. That was the guy who brought the fireworks in the equation. He writes a book about waiting, dating, and all that, and singlehood and life. I have so many videos for Miles Monroe. I don't know how many. I have watched them back and forth, read his books as many as I can back and forth, bought a number of them, read them back and forth. Hey! While I'm doing all this reading, I also there's a book written by Barack Obama. He writes about his father and I don't forget the title. But he writes about Barack Obama Sr. and his life and how he missed that gap of him having a father. But he had someone who stepped in, a stepfather, who gave him the platform to become what he is today. So for me, that's how now I got to learn that fatherhood is not a title and a name. It's a function and a position. So whoever functions in that position as your father, provides care, provides guidance, provides discipline, and gives you direction, that becomes your father. You can't have anyone who comes in play and just donates seed, but whoever walks this journey of life with you, that becomes a father. So fatherhood is inherent with all men, and all men are called into fatherhood by default.
And every man needs a father.
Thank you.
Yes.
No woman
That's
can
why,
call.
you see, Jesus was God. You think Jesus would not have come here on earth and lived and been okay? Why did they give Jesus Joseph?
The reason you need a Joseph in your life is that there's a voice in which a father speaks that only a boy will listen to and understand.
True.
Which no mother can speak in that tone. That voice has a certain authority. That voice commands a certain respect. That voice sets you in what I would call your true north and helps a man feel that I am a man.
There is a single mother listening, and now they've gone already to blame, and they say, now how about us, the men left?
If the man left, that shouldn't be an excuse. Because find an uncle somewhere. Find a man somewhere who is willing to commit their lives, to walk that journey with your sons and your daughters. Because every child needs
Because you found willing men, not one man.
No.
And that is exactly what happened in my husband's life. He also lost a father at 7 years, lost a mother later on in life, born alone. You know, because if you have a sister perhaps you can go to the sister. If you have a brother, perhaps you can go to the brother. If you have an uncle, but born alone, lost mother, lost father, but he had many men around him.
Yes.
In fact, Brand, those men, the Muyenjes and what, they even taught him how to pick out a shirt, how to pick out a good shirt, how to blend socks with the trouser, how to pick out a good belt. And those are things that we take for granted. Those are now like the trivial, onto which the deeper things, Because when I saw Brand, I saw a smart man. As not just going to...
You didn't see the work behind who made it
exactly.
Smart. So today probably what people see, all that product comes in from this. So these men are getting to their space and this is what is happening. But you must commit the man hours and the time and the resource of money. Because for some of them I had to go and visit them.
Yes.
And that cost me money. So you invest the resource of time, you're going to invest your money. You also have to commit even when you don't like them. But I learned something when I was reading, Miles was teaching about finances and success and all that in life. And Vusi also, I think, talks about it. To succeed in life, you just need two things, discipline and consistency. If you can do something consistently, repetitively all the time, consistently, if you keep up that discipline, you build character around it, and that's where your success comes from. So being in the pool of these men allowed me to also get exposed to their workplaces, get exposed to business opportunities.
Yeah, because
that's how the catering gigs now started.
Yes, because I know you actually served with these men, some of them in their offices, and some of them you served and you are not necessarily getting a pay.
But you showed up, did work, organized files, then the next an opportunity comes, it's you they call. I remember Daniel Rotiva, how I got to meet Lady Justice Catherine Bamgemere. I got to meet her through Dan, Council Dan. And how does that happen? This usual thing of serving in church, organizing things, and then he said, there's a young man who will help us organize things. That's how I morph into records management and all this work of mine that comes and being part of the different commissions of inquiry. So all these opportunities come from a place of you sitting under a certain authority and serving them.
And I know, Derrick, you have had the opportunity. I'm sorry, I'm going to use the word opportunity. Yes, it isn't. You've had the opportunity of being a house husband. Like you could have just sat back. But why do you work as hard as you do?
Miles taught me and said, before you qualify to get married, as a man, you need about 6 things. You must find a form of work that you need to do. Because a man's identity and his work are synonymous. Any man who does not put their hands to use or their mind to work, they devalue themselves. Why? The reason we get paid because of the value that we create or the value that you add. And inherent within each one of us, there's a gifting, there's a talent, there's a skill that God has given you. So we come loaded at least with one gift. Now you defraud heaven when you don't put that to use. And you sit and become like a car, you park yourself in the garage. It doesn't work that way. So working brings a place of, that is different from your job, by the way. Working brings fulfillment. Anything you find with your hand, work at it to the very best. So when you do that, you're opening yourself up to opportunities. So I've had to do that. That way, I'm also showing our sons and daughters that, you know what, you can't just be idle.
You don't wake up to sit. You don't wake up to sleep.
Yes. The scripture now doesn't make sense when the Bible says that He has created us for good works. They are predestined for us well before we even created.
Then you have no works.
Then you're seated. And yet the mandate that we have here on earth is for us to be fruitful, meaning that the seed for greatness is already in us. Then it goes on to say that multiply. So we expected to be fruitful, be multipliers of things that God has given us. Then be able to subdue. Subdue is basically to build systems, build processes, and build distribution systems, and then have dominion in that area. So it could be public speaking, it could be teaching. Now in my case, when you look at the fivefold ministry, I'm called into teaching. So if you're a teacher, you've got to read a lot, you've got to research a lot, you've got to attend seminars so that you improve your skills, increase your knowledge and learning. That way, you're doing work still. Now, as you keep resourcing yourself and doing that, you become better. Contrary to when you do nothing about yourself. So for me,
so the only reason people should be seated is if they are a chicken and they are seated on eggs.
Thank you.
Because then you're working. You're incubating. But some people are seated on nothing and they are lying that they are incubating.
That is not true. Because even when you go for a retreat, say for instance, you go for a summer holiday or whatever it is you want to call it, when you're seated there chilling, your mind is processing, it is thinking, it's looking at opportunities, it is beginning to process things, it's connecting dots, dreams and ideas here and there. That for me is critical, that you don't just become an empty head. Because why would you have 5 billion cells in your head and you're not putting them to use?
When you say empty heads,
yes, 5 billion cells in your head, you're not putting them to use, you're defrauding creation.
Wow.
You imagine, what percentage of that are you putting to use? There's somebody who has dementia, they can't think. There's somebody who is mentally ill, they can't think. There's somebody who has no hands, but they still are able to paint using their mouth. What are you doing with your eboness?
Okay, Peter Buse. So, we've almost lost you there when you said what you learned from Miles Monroe. You talked about the formal thing. Can you go through the other 5, like just mention them? And then I ask you the 2 last questions here.
Say that again.
You talked about the things you learned from Miles Monroe. You said there were 5 things, and you said something about the formal employee. No, not.
He talks about work. A man must find work. Do something with your hands. You must be a cultivator. Cultivate simply means you add value to everything.
So if you must find something to do as work, then it means you need somebody to mentor you, to teach you how to work. Number 2.
So you cultivate. Cultivation has got to do with you adding value to everything. Number 2, men are called to be teachers, because if you're called to teach, you cannot teach what you don't know. So men learn by imprint effects. You've got to learn from somebody, observe, pick ideas here, read something. And who are you teaching? You must teach your children. You must teach your wife. You know what Miles Monroe used to say? People who are in your community, because you need a safe community.
And you say, me, I am a man, but I just like to be alone.
No.
You have to be teaching people. You know, the thing Miles Monroe used to say is that he would tell the men in church, he would say, turn and look at your wife. And then they would look and he would say, that's what you've created. So if your wife is a non-thinker, that's what you've created. If your wife looks bad, that's what you've created. If your wife is daft, like you're sitting there and you're thinking she's daft, that's what you've created. Okay, so teacher to move. But you said something very profound behind the scenes. I know that we are almost ending the podcast, but you said something behind the scenes about the Bible being a letter, but you need an interpreter for it. And I think that ties in very well with the teacher. Because the teacher needs to be taught so that then they can teach.
Yes.
Can you just, briefly say something about that?
Legally, they say that Bible actually is not a divinity textbook or CRE book that people think, or a religious book. The Bible is actually a legal document. That's why it has the New and the Old Testament. Testament meaning the will and the mind of God. So that makes it a legal document. It's a constitution of heaven, speaking to how the citizens who on earth should live their lives, because that's where we come from. So the Bible is the written word, which is the letter basically. In legal terms, it would mean that for the letter to make sense, you need an advocate to interpret and bring the law to life. So in this case, you need either physical men, spiritually you need the Holy Spirit to help you to bring to remembrance that which you've read and help you to understand and interpret. And physically, you need people who understand the word, who have read it, who have studied it, done commentaries about it, done Bible studies about it, to teach you what the word means.
To teach you that Peter had a mother-in-law. Was it Peter or Paul? Who was that who had a mother-in-law who was sick? Peter. And then they healed, yes, Peter. So that you know that a man, when your mother-in-law is sick, the other one, the reaction was to bring them to a place of healing. So, dear man, gulayo kumichungwa, buy some passion fruits, because some people read it, but they didn't interpret it, because the letter will kill if there is no interpreter. So maybe why you need a mentor is to tell you, I had a story of a man, the mother-in-law died. And when the mother-in-law died, he wanted sex on that night from like now my mother has died, then Brad wants sex. Then when the wife complained, the man said, for him, that's how he grieves. Okay, we've allowed it. And so let's move on. So for him, that's how he grieves. Then he added on and he said, after that is how he grieves. After a week, when the wife was now going, the mother-in-law has died. So, there are many things the household does, and they are trying to put together. And the man said, Tunabera kwecho, must you always be going to check on your father? Tunabera wo. You understand?
That was very
That's a man that has not been taught how to behave. I've even been told of young men, and some of them are watching, some of them will watch, who have gone to take the girl back home. Like they are still dating. Nekavuge motoka. Then when he reaches the gate, he doesn't come in to greet. He just puts the girl at the gate and he zooms off. They need somebody to interpret for them the Bible.
That man needs other fellow men to sit him down and groom him and mentor him and raise him to be the man that he needs to be. When Proverbs talks about the man having a place at the city gate, that is part of the reason. It's not just for, it wasn't just for security, but
As we thought it's to tell I had Nahuente.
it's just about donating cows and
It's a
giving out.
place to say I have the other Karina there. Hey, it's a place of
It's a place of mentorship, teaching, skilling, and building, and helping each other build strategy. Also engage and account.
Wow.
How are you doing in family? How are you doing in the area of business?
So
a lot happened.
accountability. Mentorship also brings accountability.
Absolutely.
Was it part of the 5 that Mary
Yes.
talked about? So we have that.
So you need
You have
work.
the work.
You need
we
to
have the
cultivate.
teacher.
You need to be a teacher.
Work, cultivate, be a teacher,
You need to
and
be a
then
priest.
be a priest.
You need to be a priest.
Pastor Barnabas talked very well about priesthood in the one. So if you didn't watch that conversation I had with Pastor Barnabas, Pastor Samuel, please go to it. But we talked about the teacher.
Priesthood.
And then what's the last one?
You know, for you leave priesthood, it's very critical that
Please,
you pay attention
please,
to it,
please.
because the Bible says, "My people perish because of lack of."
Knowledge.
It goes on to say, because you have rejected knowledge, I will not allow you to become my priests. And because you've rejected knowledge, I will not bless your children. So ignorance becomes generational in that case.
So
God does not
ignorance is
deal with
what
ignorant
has
people.
caused us not to be priests and causes our children to live under a curse. So a man who doesn't want to be mentored is leading us to this other place of being rejected. That is why they become dejected as priests, and then their children are cursed.
That is
It's a cycle. Wow.
Very dangerous.
Wow. And then that last one was?
And then he also says that, I think he talks about maturity, that a man must be mature. Now, maturity has nothing to do with your age. It has everything to do with you taking responsibility. And responsibility inherent within that ties into your leadership aspect. You must be able to lead.
The key word is must.
Must. It's not an option. It's not
you
a night.
could.
Yeah, it's not negotiable. You must be able to lead. Now, how you lead, if you succeed in leading your personal life, out of that, then you can lead publicly.
Yeah. And
can't
self-leadership is a whole big thing.
Yes. So people who fail in their personal leadership fail in their leadership of their families and also in their public life. The crisis most governments will have will simply stem from the fact that you have individuals who have failed to lead their personal lives. Now they're in the public office. It gets worse.
Wow.
So that's where the crisis is. We have a leadership vacuum. So until a man is able to appreciate some of these things, and they don't happen overnight, they take time, because there's pruning that happens. They will show you direction. There's a way that you'll not like. They'll draw you from different habits and things you've been doing to be able to groom you into the leader that you ought to be.
When I'm with you, I enjoy our conversations. I just want to do one last one.
Okay.
You've also been mentored to be a good husband. Talk to us about mentorship you have received in this area of marriage that has made you a different type of man, that Lydia is not whining and complaining about the way I know many other women are whining and complaining about their husbands. I mean, as long as a man is a man, can they just marry?
No. I told you I took off 3 years. The 3 years I was learning about fatherhood. I was learning about marriage before I actually made a decision to marry Lydia. Took 3 years to do nothing but read about fatherhood. The product I am today is a 3-year product that was work that was done prior to getting married. 3 solid years. That's a university degree that you do and then graduate. So me, I went on a 3-year course because I had to study about fatherhood, its purpose, why God calls us men, why God is so fascinated with fatherhood. What is it? What is the big deal? So in reading all these many books and having all these many men around me and many mentors, I was drawing out to understand. Meanwhile, I had access to their marriages.
Yeah.
So I saw how they treated their wives, because me, I didn't have that model. Save for my grandfather. My grandfather, Mr. Coop, actually, I saw him provide for the family. He was a very good provider. Now, from these other men, I learned about the spiritual principles they lived by. So the value system and principles that are finally etched in me and I live by stem from observing and affirming them and saying, okay, this works, this doesn't work. So you meet a man like John Kakita, he's a very humble man. Coming from that side, the West, you know, the Wachiga and all these things, there's a way they respond. And when the guy tells that, when my wife, Pearl, does this, I just stand back and say, Pearl, say, Chief, you don't tell it, says, no, just hold back and say, Pearl, Then you learn how to control your emotions and feelings. You learn how to temper yourself down even when things are out of context. So a lot of that learning comes from that space. Then in terms of the reading culture, Brian reads quite a lot and he causes headache when you're with him because he keeps saying the other book and that other book and the other book and the other book. John, the same thing. Mujen, you sit with him, he keeps telling you, I've read this marketing book, read this spiritual book, read this. So you feel like, what am I doing?
Mujen is such a man of the spirit. He just keeps gliding into different realms, and there is no way a man can be in his space and stay a spiritual duckling.
No. So you can't sit with these men and their flight is at that speed, they are at that cruise speed, and you remain the same. You either ship in or take away the ship and become a lion this time round. You just need to change, because eagles don't fly with what? Don't fly with other
They don't
birds.
fly with birds, other birds, ducks, chicken.
They don't do that.
The chicken doesn't even know
They
that
don't.
ego exists.
They don't. And the turbulence that there is at that height is quite a lot. Turbulence, I mean, they juggle so many other responsibilities. So don't tell me you're too busy. We all have 24 hours. The choice is yours, how you plan and prioritize your time. We're all busy. Busy could mean you're doing nothing. Working could mean you're being productive. So which of the two are you part of? So these men are very productive with their time. They will rise up early, do things early, set the pace for the day early. By the other person I forgot in this equation was Dr. James Magara. Got hooked into him through that ministry of swap, kept tapping in through slowly. A man has so much wisdom. A man authors books. A man speaks about that, and you cannot expect all that much from him until when you sit and hear him speak. So one time we comes for swap meeting, and we were in Entebbe, off Entebbe, in one of those SU camps. Spent about 40 minutes of sitting with him, asking very many questions. One of the things that we do as a mentee is that you ask many questions. That's where you learn from. If you don't engage and ask questions, you don't get to learn. So in that space of asking many questions, that's how I learned about how the doctor built Dental. Jubilee Dental, how you build a business, how you build accounting systems, and all that. Why is it important? Then he speaks about the spiritual. You have to be a spiritual think tank as a priest and as a man, as a husband. When you do that, you protect the family and yourself from delusions of different doctrines.
Because you're
and all
supposed
that.
to protect.
Yes. So the other part was actually protection. Aspect number
3.
3, yes. So you're a protector. If you can't protect the integrity of the family, protect the values and the principles of the family, you're not good enough until you get to do that. So James Magara speaks to me about his story and how he gets married and the challenges he had prior to marriage, how he was also first of all rejected.
Yes.
I thought the man was just a doctor and everything failed him. He said, no. So their story and Lorna, I got tapped into it. I said, okay.
And I also remember that at SWAP, Daniel and Patricia used to bring you several people to talk to
several
you,
speakers.
several married. So you got to see a cocktail of marriages and how these ones manage finances, how the other ones do. And this is not at a panel discussion at church where someone is going to gloss over their answers, because the beauty of mentorship is we get intimate. You see into me, because what I remember is how you guys visited us in our home in Chitagogwa before we even completed it. And I remember you guys washing dishes. I still remember the Joel Senyonyis and, everybody in there and the questions you were asking us, and, just watching to see how a home is created, to see how the colors are coordinated, because that is what mentorship is about. But you know what, Derrick? This conversation may not end.
If you ask Lydia, she'll tell you the first time they visited my place, I painted my own house. I used to live a 2-bedroom house. So recent, we're in a building phase of our home, and she was saying, can we recreate the other colors you had in the house?
Oh.
So I've been trying to remember the color codes.
As you had
The color coding.
You...
So I'm like, but I put a number of codings together to get this thing. So that happened in that space. But also now for the young people, remember there are others who are not yet married, there are those who are not yet in relationships. Joel will tell you, and that whole company, I used to invite them every Sunday evening to my place, and I would cook for them. So every evening they were assured of lunch.
They were going to have lunch.
So we'd go to church. After that, we used to have a container there after.
I remember that
container meeting. They would now come to my place, treat them to a meal. So at some point I reflected, like, maybe that's where the catering thing really started.
Yeah, because even me, by the way, my catering started because I was serving in Apples of Gold. That is how it started. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm coming back next week with Derrick because we are going to talk about one of those pillars, those things that he has been studying, this thing called fatherhood and parenting. We are going to go deep into that conversation, so I'm not going to tell him to give you parting shots because he's not parting. Today we have just done the journey of mentorship, just to hear the stories of mentorship. And when we were talking, I just got this thing of, I should just be bringing guests for a few weeks where they tell us their story, like you have told us, tell us mentorship. Then in the next conversation I have with them, they teach us one of the aspects broadly, one or two. I think that's good. Of course, Derrick is going to be a frequent person on this channel. Unbeknownst to him, I have plans for him for next year. So I have plans for you, plans for Brand, plans for Pastor Barnabas, plans for Lydia, plans for Tina. I have all these grand plans of, just us coming and, just having a conversation as if the cameras are not there and, just beginning to talk and pour into the people. I can tell you that there are times I have conversations with Derrick, and when I'm done, I'm like, I wish there was a camera here. Yeah, like we get so many of those. I'm like, I wish there was a camera here. But Derrick, thank you so much for coming this time.
You're welcome.
It's been beautiful. I know that our people are happy and blessed. We are here at Keja Film House. I have told you that I'm going to bring you people, you all. I have brought you another one. They are going to put their bio across the screen. But also I have Sissy on the brushes. I was telling her, don't overpaint me. But we have Priscilla, and she's also, her numbers are going to go across the screen. And Derrick runs a catering company called
Elo's Grill and Kitchen. We do outside catering. Yes,
they do outside catering. They visit schools. You have your meeting for parents. You have a school and you'd like somebody to come and you have a wedding. You have an introduction. I do quite some work with Derrick, and so I am very happy to market his work and to have you, my person, work with them. And of course, Eunice Kitchen, Mind, Body, and Soul also brings you this podcast, and we want to say, Derrick, say bye to the people.
Thank you to our listeners. It's a goodbye from me.
Thank you.